Screen here, hopefully, in a second. There we go. Good afternoon. So my name is Tim from Signagelive, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more detail about proof of play. For those of you that haven't attended one of these live sessions before, what we're going to do is give you a bit of an overview of a feature or a functionality or something that could be of benefit to you in Signagelive, and we'll talk about that in some more depth so you have a good understanding of what the features are, what the functionality is, and why it's a useful tool for most people, maybe not everyone, it depends on what we're talking about. So we've already done quite a few of these based on different elements within Signagelive. We decided to go on proof of play today. It's more of a unique feature and functionality, but it's very useful to know that it exists, especially if you're in a certain range of users out there looking to use proof of play for things like advertising. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a moment. So again, as I said, my name is Tim from Signagelive. We're going to be doing these streams every Thursday at 3 p.m. So feel free to set yourself a reminder, grab a drink, and come and join me and just kind of walk through some of the platform. This will all be collated into a playlist, which you'll see on the Signagelive YouTube page, and it's a playlist of all of these videos that you can go and revisit whenever you want to. So when we get started and we start talking about proof of play, what is proof of play conceptually? So we're going to go over here on this slide deck. So very simply, proof of play within Signagelive is the process of recording the start and end time of when a media asset is played. On certain players, the reason that media asset starts playing and the reason the media asset stops playing is recorded. So what we're going to talk about today is who is proof of play for, and why do we want it, and what's the benefit, and where's the use case, and why would people potentially need proof of play? So to do that, I've got a couple of examples here that we're going to talk about in some level. One of the things I want to mention first when we're talking about proof of play is it isn't for everyone. Not everyone will need the proof of play functionality, but if you are looking at a way of being able to process and guarantee when your assets, i.e. your images or your videos or whatever it is that you're looking to display, did actually display on that screen, proof of play is the most foolproof way of doing that, no pun intended. Now, obviously, within our reporting and within the way that Signagelive normally works, you'll be able to go and scan for some information as to whether a player is running, whether the dashboard is up and running, and you can see the way that the player is running currently. Proof of play is the next step on from there. Being able to say with 100% certainty that an asset was delivered to a device and played and then finished. And the reason that functionality is so highly requested is for a few specific use cases, and we're going to go over them now. So the first one that I wanted to mention, and it's kind of the clear leader in terms of when we're talking about this, is retail and advertisement. So obviously we've got an example down there. So client brand A, your content is over a Christmas period showing X number of times in Y locations, which will correlate with POS data that can be seen to have influences in Z sales. Or perhaps a client brand A may wish to rethink how a campaign looks and feels, as given X and Y and Z data would be more beneficial to change something. Let's break that down a little bit more specifically. So let's say you have advertisement on your digital signage in retail environments across a global or regional level. Now, what proof of play will allow you to do is track certain assets, whether it's just one image or several images or some of the content within your digital signage or all of the content in your digital signage, and then send a report back as to how many times that asset was actually displayed, what the total duration of that display time was, and some other useful tools. And the reason, and given this kind of example that we've got down here, the reason that's beneficial is you can start correlating that with other data and information that you may already have to hand. In this example, something like point of sales data. So you may say, well, we showed our ad 6,000 times on Monday, and we showed our ad 2,000 times on Tuesday. And on Monday, when we had our ad campaign running stronger, we could see that more of those items were sold at the POS system by X amount. So it just gives you that ability and insight into how your advertising may be affecting your sale, especially if your advertisement is based around products within that store at that given time. Obviously, that becomes a little bit more broad if we're talking about different advertisement terms, that we're advertising on a national basis on products that may not be available in that store. But there's a range of different use cases that this may be of benefit for. But the core concept behind proof of play is this data is coming back to you, it's collating itself and saying this is the amount of times that particular asset was displayed. And you don't have to track everything. Obviously, a lot of the times within digital signage, what we end up with having is several different types of content. Evergreen content, which is content that just displays all the time, and it's not relevant, there's no advertisement attached to it, it's just a tracked loop or a tracked content that keeps people engaged. And then you might splice that in with, you know, a fizzy drink campaign or whatever it might be that's going to be most relevant to you. Now that's the core campaign. There are others out there though. So for example, internal communications, duty of care and compliance, which is an interesting one that I hadn't thought of before we started doing proof of play. But the concept around that is a lot of the times in corporate environments or any environment where you've got staff where you need to train or inform or give them HR information or whatever that might be, there is the capability of being able to report back how many times assets have played. So you may have your general content, which is just for everyone's, well-being or understanding, or sales data or metrics, anything along those lines. But then on the other side of it, you may say, well, actually, we've got these. Perfect example right now, we've got COVID-based content that we want to get out to those users and make sure that they're seeing it. Well, proof of play will allow you to then report back on how often those assets were available. The core around proof of play is it is an accurate representation. It's taking the data. So let's just say we've got a screen and locally it showed that asset 100 times, an image, let's say, showed that image 100 times. But on the 100th showing or on the 101th showing, that player fell off a shelf and broke into 1,000 pieces. That player is no longer reporting that data. It is not successfully managed to deliver that data, and it will be reflected on the proof of play. And there's the key difference. It's about making sure that, yes, the content that I wanted to see did display, and then getting that data back to confirm it. And again, if we go back to the advertisement concept, that can be a key metric for someone that's paying for an advertisement or paying for a slot in a campaign and then receiving the data back. And sometimes you can obviously reverse engineer that and say, well, actually, we have 15 minutes of extra space. Would you like to have that as an additional advertisement space if it's available? Advertiser or the advertiser group says, yes, we would like to take you up on that, and then they can be charged accordingly. So it's all of it is about building that interface and building that capability of guaranteeing and having some really solid metrics around that. And it's quite, as I said at the beginning, it's quite a bespoke function within Signagelive, but it's very, very beneficial for these kinds of use cases. So the following clients will support proof of play logging: PC players, i.e. Electron players, IDEA, Samsung, the smart signage platforms, LG WebOS, Chrome OS, and BrightSign. So all of these will have proof of play. You don't need anything else. There's no additional hardware that you need specifically. You just need to have proof of play enabled. It's worth mentioning now that proof of play is an additional module within Signagelive. So if you are looking to use proof of play in a trial environment or anything like that, let us know in advance and we'll add that into your network. And obviously, if that's something that you do decide you want to go forward with, then there'll be an additional charge on top of that, which we can discuss with you. So let's talk about how these pieces come together. As I said at the beginning, proof of play doesn't necessarily cover all bases. You don't have to have everything tracked. So there are several different layers that you can enable proof of play on. Now this is kind of a nice graphic just to show you what that means, and I'll demonstrate what this actually looks like on the Signagelive network in a moment. Now the first thing you're going to need to do is highlight the players that you want proof of play on. Let's just say, as an example, I have 10 players and I only want 2 of them to actually log proof of play because those are my advertisement players, or those are the ones that I'm keen on. So I can go and enable those players on the network manager, which I'll show you in a moment. And once we've done that, we need to go down to this next level. So do we want to track things by media asset at the top kind of outermost circle here? And what that basically means is if we tag a media asset and say, wherever this media asset goes, I want it to log proof of play. You can then put that media asset in multiple playlists or different layout zones or whatever combination of delivery and the publishment that you want to do. Alternatively, you can just say a layout. I have a layout which is a screen split in 2 halves, and whatever I put in that, I want it to tag proof of play. So if I put a media asset in there, then regardless of whether that media asset is or is not logging for proof of play, it will turn up on that layout design and log the proof of play. Same thing goes with the layout zone, so we will have multiple zones, but I actually say the left-hand side of the screen is my advertisement side, and the right-hand side is more for that evergreen content, so you can do it by that way as well. Going further into that circle then, so playlist, you've got a playlist of content, and you're just going to say, whatever I put in this playlist, assume please that I would like proof of play enabled on there. And then the kind of most inner circle is playlist media asset. So what that basically means is on a media asset in a playlist, only when that media asset is played in that playlist will it be included. And what that basically means is instead of just saying wherever this asset goes, track it, it's saying as long as this asset goes into this playlist, I now want to enable proof of play on that. So you're being very, very specific. Now you may ask, what are the benefits of doing it in this way? Why not just tag everything? Why not just track everything from proof of play? Well, first of all, you have to just be aware that if you're not interested in knowing proof of play on your evergreen content, all you're doing is muddying your reporting data by having it there. So why not just enable it on the pieces that you know you need to report back on? So when you do run your reports, which I'll show you through in a moment, it's very nice and clear, and it's just showing you the content that you want to see. So proof of play will only return the data if the player was able to deliver the media asset to the screen or to the device, to the player. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, screen falls over, smashes into 1,000 pieces, can no longer receive data. It will be logged on that proof of play, and you'll see that that content has stopped displaying. Marrying that up with your dashboard within Signagelive to make sure that devices are turned on and working as they should do, you'll very quickly be able to see what happened to the proof of play and why it stopped displaying, whether that be, you know, power outage or anything along those lines. So that, you know, is crucial functionality for proof of play, allowing for a guaranteed accuracy when reporting, and it's not assumptive, which I think is the core here. So let's go on to a demonstration, and I'm not going to go through every single asset of this and every single facet of proof of play, but we are going to show you about how we'd set up proof of play, how we would enable proof of play on our list of players, and then go down to the level of asset, layout, etc. And then we'll also take you through a little bit of an overview of the dashboard in proof of play and what it looks like to actually get a report from that. So let's go over now to our Signagelive, go full screen. So we're on our Signagelive dashboard now. We've got all of our devices. What I can do is go onto the network manager on the top left hand corner here and then go to manage. Within there you'll see I have a list of these players. Now if I want to tag a range of them, I can highlight a range of devices here and then go to the player settings. And in there you've got the option to go to proof of play, and I can amend proof of play configuration to either enable it or disable it. Now obviously if you want every single player to have proof of play, then all you're going to need to do is go to the drop down and select all, which will highlight every device that you have. Go to the player settings, amend the proof of play configuration and enable that proof of play. Nice and simple, regardless of your network size, you can do that in a few minutes. Now that proof of play has been enabled on all of these players, we can feel confident that whatever we actually send and enable to have proof of play on will then display on an approved proof of play player and will report back to us. So let's talk about that proof of play enabler that we just saw a moment ago. That actually turns up on multiple elements within the Signagelive experience. So if I go to the playlist editor where I will be creating my playlist, I would be making my change, I can select my asset here. So this is by media asset level. I can go to the properties of that asset. I can go to my proof of play and I can log each time this asset plays. One other thing that I have mentioned here is references. You can add in a reference to any of these levels, and what will happen is that's basically a function of being able to search in your reporting. So this reference might be, you know, advertiser A. Let's just call it add A. Add 1. So it's add 1 is our reference, and later on, if we want to go and collate all the data for our first advertiser, we just go and search for add 1, and that reporting will find it. And we'll talk more about the reporting in a moment. The most kind of small base level that we can do is actually, instead of that, grab the other media asset, drag and drop it into the playlist, and from here enable proof of play. So we're not talking about the main asset that lives in Signagelive. We're now talking about just this one asset, just in this playlist. We're being very specific as to when and where we should or should not track proof of play. We can also go to the playlist manager here. So within the playlist manager, you'll have all of your playlists which you've created in the past, and in likewise exactly the same situation, we can go onto the right hand side here, go into the properties, and then we can go into the proof of play. And again, exactly the same experience here. So log each time an asset is played here and enter in the reference codes if you want them. There's no right or wrong answer in how to do this. This all comes down to your preference. It all comes down to how you're already kind of managing your network and sending that content out. In the same level, we can go to our layout designs, select a layout design and say specifically, I'm going to go and enable it on those. The concept doesn't change here. It's all about how we set this up. So now that we've done all of this, what will happen is over time, as these players are receiving their content and then reporting back, which they do on intervals of 24 hours, you'll see all of that data start to collate. And what I'll mention is on the drop down on the top right hand corner here, I have the option to go to proof of play. If this is your first time doing proof of play, or you happen to be watching this video whilst you're doing your first instance of Signagelive and you haven't done so before, you'll need an administrator. If that's not yourself, you'll need an administrator to go over to the network and edit the network. And in there, you'll see any API applications that are connected. So for example, here we have proof of play. Go into the settings, and in here, you can actually see who has access to proof of play. So by default, no one will have access to proof of play apart from the admin. They can go to new user, select any of the users they've already added to Signagelive, and that will then appear as a user in the proof of play. That user, when they log into Signagelive next, will then be able to go to the selected applications. They'll see the standard apps that they normally can manage, like Signagelive, Message Manager, calendar integrations, whatever that might be, but they'll also have the proof of play dashboard. This is the proof of play dashboard. So it's a completely separate entity from the dashboard that controls your players and your devices. It just gives you that overview of what content is running, and this dashboard at the moment that we can look at will show us impressions, media assets, players, a bit of an overview of how it's been doing. And currently we've got this resting on June 2020, so we can see that dashboard. If we need to go backwards and just say, well, what does that look like in comparison to March, or what does that look like in comparison to October, you can see that that's changed. Every single impression is logged, so we've got a really big number here because it's every time an asset was displayed on every group of players. So over 18 players and 14 different media assets, are assets displayed 34 million times, 542,318 times. And again, you can use this just as a high level. You can also filter on media asset, so just make sure you see how many impressions did a particular asset have, and that most likely means obviously you've got that asset in more times over all of the media assets in comparison to anything else. Likewise, same thing with players. So in this case, we obviously have one player that was on for a much longer period of time, or potentially just had a lot of smaller pieces of content that's running more often than not. So we're just talking about a quick overview. How is everything running? How is our proof of play kind of reporting back to us? Now that we've done that, the next thing is to talk about reporting. Now in the reporting drop down here, you can produce reports, and what you'll see is a list of options. Down at the bottom, you've got all the reports that have been created, their description, whether they are a main report, how that reporting is done. You've got some filter options here. So if I don't want to see the monthly options, I don't want to see the weekly options, and I don't want to see ad hoc, the monthlies, dailies, or weeklies, you can just see the ad hoc ones here as well. And there's a whole range of different ways. In essence, just to break down these groupings here, you've got verbose, which is the most comprehensive list, a CSV file that you can download of every asset, when it was played, when it wasn't played, just the most verbose way we can give you that data. And the reason that we've done this is because we don't know where you want to go with this next. It could be that actually you're plugging the CSV file into your own system that reports out and kind of spits out all the reports for you. So we want to give you that option to really easily go and grab all of the data. You can plug it in wherever you want it to do, and it will generate those reports that you want it to. On top of that, we've got some other options. So group by player, then media asset, and group by media asset, then player. So at this point, what I'm going to do is actually show you an example of this report. Now I have had to kind of grey out some of the areas, but you'll see more or less. Oh, let me just get back in there. Bear with me. I'm going to have to log in. Technology. Bear with me 2 moments. Okay. Minor hiccup there. We are back. So in this example, and I've had to kind of get rid of some of the sensitive data here, but you'll see that what we've got it listed here is by group by media asset, then by player, additional data created. So your ID here is your ID of your player ID, so you can see the list of the IDs. Down here you'd also have the names of the assets. So, whether it would be fizzy drink add 1, fizzy drink add 2, fizzy drink add 3. And then your references. So any of those things that we manually entered into the asset to track later and actually make sure that we can filter or group in the way that we want to when we're actually exporting these, or maybe even giving these to a client or giving these to head office or whatever it might be for a reporting perspective. And then the total duration in seconds as to how long that asset was displayed total, and total impressions. So how many times it appeared on a player. So we could quite easily say 252 divided by 40 times, 45 would be the average time an asset was displayed on screen for, assumptively. There is also an asset URL, so I can click on here and actually see the asset that we're talking about, just for ease of use, so you can make sure, yep, this is exactly the asset I thought I was looking at, and yes, this is what we want to report on today. The verbose one is very similar to this. There's a lot more data. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this today because it's more conceptually around where proof of play fits and where the benefit is. But this is your reporting functionality, and we've already had several clients which have taken this to the next level and converted this into their own system, or they've got something that they've already plugged in and they've already got a report for the rest of their advertisement, and this fits in really nicely with giving a full list of reports to those that are looking to do advertising and alike. So that is pretty much everything that I wanted to show you through today. I'm just going to quickly go back to our initial view here of the overview of where the assets are. So just to talk about that in slightly more detail, and we're going back to why we wouldn't have all of our assets visible, or why we wouldn't do proof of play to everything. As you saw on that dashboard that I had a moment ago, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of things going forward and back, because in reality, the only way to make sure we're accurately delivering this to you is to pull that information back with the player when it connects in, and we're making sure that you've got the most up-to-date data. So that's where we go down to this level of saying, well, actually, how do we want to run our digital signage, and how do we want to run our proof of play? And that's where we can help you, because we've done this a lot of times in the past. So if you do need any assistance, or if you want to talk about conceptually how you would do this when it comes to location, or whether it comes to how a screen is set up, or different zones on a screen, or who's managing that, or who has access to manage that, all of these things we can assist you with. So there's a lot of options, and there's no right and wrong answer. But if you are looking for the right and wrong answer, then we can help you figure that out as we go through this. That's more or less everything that I wanted to talk to you about today with Proof of Play. Hopefully that's been really useful. If you do have any questions, there's a Q&A section coming up next, so feel free to go in, ask any questions that you have. We'll get those answered as we go through. As I said before, this will be recorded, or this has been recorded, and will be uploaded to the playlist as you see, and you may see this appear on social media sites or wherever it becomes beneficial. So it will be around if you need it. If you do need to speak to us in further detail, though, feel free to reach out to us. Signagelive.com is the website. You can go into the chat box there and start speaking to someone directly. And if they need to, they'll get you in touch with a sales member directly to have a further conversation. Other than that, thank you very much for joining me. My name has been Tim, and I'm going to go over to the Q&A section now. If you've got any additional questions, we will take it from there. Have a good day.